Hey guys, my name is Michelle Fondin and I'm an author and speaker. And today I'm coming back to you after about 10 days maybe of not posting videos on YouTube, and also for some of you who know that there was a video that was up having to do a little bit more with my personal journey, with my personal life, that was asked to be taken down. And in this video that I'm filming now in front of you, it was really hard coming to you with this because I have created this forum, this YouTube channel, this service for you guys as a forum to be completely transparent with my life, completely transparent with things that I do to help you guys, and the books that I write, and the vlogs and the vlogs and the journey that I encounter. And never ever before have I had to be censored in what I'm saying to you. And for the reasons that there's a current child custody case that's open, and it's so unfortunate, and this has been such a painful week for me, and really kind of a painful month for me, that this journey has unfolded in more painful ways than I could have ever imagined in my entire life. And that feeling of things spinning so out of control that you don't understand exactly where it's going. But what's disappointed me even more is that I believe that as a public figure, I do have a voice, and not only is my voice for my own life, as a proponent for my own life, but my voice is also for you guys. And so I want to just explore a topic today, because I can't say too much about what is happening, what has happened. I just want to let you guys know that I am fighting as hard as I possibly can for my son, and to retain physical custody that I have of him and bring him back to me. And I will continue to fight the fight of faith, and I believe that God has got my back. I believe that God is fighting my battles for me. I really thank you guys. So many people reached out to me with their support and their kind words and their prayers and their pledge of support. And I just want to say how grateful I am to you guys, because there are certain people in my life that just don't know the entire story. It's that story was something that I kept concealed for a long time, and except for the immediate members of my family who have cognizance of this, and some don't. When I'm starting to open up and say, this is what happened, and this is the voice that I need, and this is the voice that I need moving forward, and the reasons why I need to do that is that I was encountered with some resistance. I was encountered with some criticism, but most of the praise that I got was from you guys. It was from the people who have been following me, who believe in what I do, in my mission in life, and that I can open up avenues that have been shut for many of you, and avenues that have been closed. And really, I'm a proponent of the truth. And so anything that I bring to you is, I'm telling you like it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I'm not going to try to manipulate the truth into making it something else than actually what it is. And that's painful for some people. For some people, that's painful. It's painful to recognize that there are truths that are ugly, that there are truths that are not all pretty and sugar-coated, and everybody has to play nice. So the question I'm bringing to you guys to open up this discussion today, and I really want this to be a discussion because it has come to me that this is a real point of contention among people who want to play nice and people who want to be real. And so the question that I have for you guys is, when is it okay to keep the silence, and when should that silence be broken? Let me qualify that with a better descriptor. I'm not talking about silence and meditation. I do talk a lot about meditation and tranquility and yoga and peacefulness and living a serene life, living a spiritual life, relying totally on God. And I'm not talking about that type of silence. I'm talking about the other type of silence of protecting people that probably don't need protecting. Especially as women, we grow up in a culture which teaches us to be nice. To be nice and keep the status quo, and to not make waves, and to go ahead and just smooth things over and allow things to be smooth and nice and just not make waves, really. And that's really what I was taught. I was taught to play nice, not make waves, be the better person, be the higher person. And that's all well and good until it affects your life personally, and it affects your children personally, and it affects your family personally, and it affects your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being personally. So one of the huge reasons why I find myself in the conundrum that I find myself in today is because of the past in which I played nice. That I didn't stand up for my beliefs, that I didn't stand up for what I believed in, that I didn't stand up for myself, that I didn't stand in my personal power, that I let someone else empower me with their personal power and overpower me and overshadow, and I didn't stand up for my rights. I didn't stand up for what I believed in. I decided to play nice. And I even remember I was going through this spiritual journey and this spiritual process, and I even said, like, I'm going to be like Gandhi. I'm just going to sit and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to be peaceful and I'm not going to create waves and I'm not going to say anything and I'm going to be the better person, and that is it. And so that's really the role that I played a lot in my past, and I just sat there and I didn't say much, and I let certain people in my life like walk all over me, and I wanted to remain peaceful and serene and not create waves. And that is one of the main reasons why I'm in the mess that I'm in right now. So I really believe that through personal growth, it's not only about finding peacefulness and finding tranquility and finding a higher spiritual self and a higher spiritual being. It's also about being assertive. And I talk to you guys about being assertive, and there's a video on assertiveness versus aggressiveness, and there's videos on setting boundaries and being able to set boundaries. And this is more about standing in your personal power and choosing your battles and allowing yourself to speak out when it is necessary. And I think that for me, and I don't know, share this with friends and have discussions around this, because for me, I believe that as I've grown as a person, as I've grown as a mom, as I've grown in my work, as I've grown as a writer, as I've grown in someone who speaks about those in dysfunctional relationships, in addictive relationships, that it is unsafe to keep silent in certain situations. So let me explain what that means. Is that a lot of times, let's take, for example, an alcoholic relationship. So let's take a dysfunctional alcoholic family relationship. So one of the things that is often said in an alcoholic family relationship is that we need to keep it quiet. Shh. Don't tell anyone your dad drinks too much. Don't tell anyone your mom drinks too much. Don't say anything. Just keep quiet. Just be a good girl. Be a good boy. Just play nice. Just go about your business and everything will be fine. No one needs to know about this. And so that is a perpetual conversation that happens in an alcoholic household. It's a perpetual conversation that tends to happen in these types of dysfunctional relationships. And it almost goes in the complete opposite direction. Whereas the person who is, and I don't use this word lightly, the person who is victimized, if you will, or in that dysfunctional relationship as on the receiving end, really, especially as children. We're talking about children, we're talking about women who are in a lesser power position. We are also talking about men who are in a lesser power position. When I say power position, I'm talking about, for example, someone who has a a higher prestigious role, or someone who has a lot more money, or someone who has the upper hand, so to speak, in the relationship. And that power play can come in different roles. And I'm not going to discriminate against men here, because I certainly know men who have been in the lesser power position in a relationship. So I'm talking about that. And when I say it goes the opposite direction, is that when somebody is forced, because nobody's really forced to do anything, but as a child, you might have been forced to play nice and to not make waves and to not say anything and to keep the silence and to not tell anybody, that it almost goes in the opposite direction, where it becomes, let's protect that person. Let's protect the alcoholic. Let's protect the dysfunctional member. Let's protect them. And it almost becomes an effort to say, oh, poor this person. They are, yes, being abusive. They are, yes, wreaking havoc on the entire family. But we need to protect them. And so it just becomes this really convoluted way of not only keeping silent about what's going on, but also about protecting the other person. Like, now they are the victim. It just doesn't make sense. And, this happens all the time. And we've seen this happen with women in positions of lesser power than men in certain corporations and companies, where they have to look the other way when a colleague who is of a higher ranking makes a sexual comment toward them, or says something about what they're wearing, or says something about what their salary should be. And so we see this happening all the time, and it's always having to do with someone who is in a higher powered position. So in my case, it was multifaceted, and it is multifaceted, and it has been in the past multifaceted, where one person had more money, had more power, in a power position. They were of the opposite gender of me, and that tends to hold a more power position. I believe that these inequities in saying, like, you have to keep the status quo and you have to keep silent and you can't say anything lest anybody else be hurt, such as the children or the family or the mother and father or the friends or the colleagues or the work or whatever it is. It's like, who is really being protected? And that's the question I have for you guys, is where do you cross that line from protecting the person that it's at the lesser position of power or the more vulnerable party, and where do you stay silent to protect the person who is in the greater position of power? Like, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I can tell you what I would be inclined to believe and think now, with many more years of experience, of life experience, and having been on the end where I was the one staying silent, where I was the one keeping quiet to not make waves. And really, that is something that I personally grew up with. I grew up with, don't make waves, keep the peace, be the better person. And I even had a yoga teacher. His name was John Gentile. I love him. He's a great guy. He teaches yoga in Vienna, Virginia. And John said something to me when I was in a yoga class, and I got super confused because I was on this spiritual path. I was newly on this spiritual path. I've been on and off a spiritual path many years, from my 20s to my 30s, until like I was full on and fully engaged in a spiritual path. And it was early in my yoga days, and John said something to us in class, in yoga class, and I found it baffling because I didn't fully understand it at the moment, but now I totally understand it. And he was talking about the fact of peace, serenity, love, unconditional acceptance, flowing love, God's love. Like, all of those things are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things. Those are all things toward which we must attain. He was talking about that, and he said, the peace, the serenity, the giving, the karma yoga, as he calls it. He calls it the karma yoga, which Karma yoga is the yoga of service. It's of selfless service to other people, or bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of love. So it's that selfless service, it's that moving action of service toward others, and in finding that peacefulness and finding that love and finding that serenity. So he said, yes, that's what we reach for. That's what we reach to attain on one hand. But on the other hand, you have to be real. And you have to understand that not everybody is out there looking for your best interest. Not everyone is operating at that level of consciousness. Not everyone is operating from that point of view of selfless service. And so, because not everyone is operating from the point of view of unconditional love and of selfless service, that you need to protect yourself. And for me, living in that ideal space of yoga and union and serenity and peace and love and joy and all those wonderful things, I couldn't grasp that at that time. I thought, well, I believe that everything can be attained through love and joy and happiness and peacefulness, and everybody just understanding everyone and just bringing it all together and being happy and being serene and being wonderful people to each other and being kind to each other. And I didn't understand what he was talking about until recently. Until recently, when I realized that, oh my gosh, that doesn't work. That doesn't work in every situation. It doesn't work in every situation. It just doesn't. And I'm a person that I don't like conflict. I hate conflict. I will stay away from conflict. And remember, the way I was brought up is you don't make waves. You don't make waves. You remain the status quo. Like, you're the good girl. You're the good person. Don't make waves. I really tried so many times in the past just to stay happy, stay content, avoid conflict, avoid trouble. And what ended up happening, especially in this instance, is that it didn't work. It didn't work because, going back to what John said to us as yoga students is that not everyone is operating at that level. Not everyone is operating at that level of selfless service. Not everyone is operating at the level of unconditional love and peace and serenity and freedom. And really, like, that is what unconditional love is. It's allowing people the space and the freedom to be who they are, to express themselves, to be unconditionally loving and open and cheering each other on and being like, yeah, this might not be the best for me, but it might be the best for you. Let's see how we can work it out. Let's see how we can support each other's dreams. So that is not the way everyone operates. That's not the way everyone works. And it didn't work. So then I was faced with this anguish of, oh my gosh, this isn't working. So now I have to stand up in my own personal power and fight for what I believe in. And being someone who has never done that before, it's super disconcerting because now you have to find the energy within yourself to be able to do that. Let me tell you guys a story. So when I was about 10 to 13 years old, somewhere around there was an uncle of mine who hadn't seen his daughter in years, and I couldn't quite understand why. So he was married to a woman who he had a child with, and who joined a cult. We're talking about a religious cult, a very extreme religious cult, and he was told that if he did not join this religious cult or followed the certain rules of this religious cult, that he couldn't see his daughter again. The mother was backed up by the grandmother and by the entire family, who were all members of this religious cult. And they all said that if you do not follow the precepts of this religious cult or whatever the rules were of this cult, that you can't see your daughter again. So he fought for a time, but as some of you know, if you're a member of a religious cult and you've got the backing of that entire cult, then it's really hard to get somebody out of a cult rather than like go right into it. So he had given up, and I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, like you gave up. Like you just gave up. Like you gave up. You haven't seen your daughter in years and years and years, and you just gave up. And that really marked me as a young child. I guess I was a child. I was maybe 12, 13. I can't remember. But it really struck me because I was like, how come you didn't fight for her? Like, why? Why in the world wouldn't you fight for her? And he's like, but I did fight for her. I just couldn't overcome the power that this cult had over that entire family. And because of that, like, I was powerless. I couldn't overcome the power of that religious cult. So in this situation that I find myself in is that, you know, when I go back to the precepts of like peace and serenity and joy and freedom and unconditional love and playing nice and being the nice person and being the nice girl, I'm drawn back to that conversation with my uncle. I'm drawn back to that conversation of like, why did you give up? Why? I don't understand. Why were you just silent about it? Like, couldn't you have told someone about that cult and the religious cult that they were in and how it sucked them in and how many people were overpowering you with this religious cult? Like, why couldn't have you done anything about it? And so when I was faced with this, I felt like the advice I was giving to him, and I just said, like, I need to fight for this. I know what's right. Like, I know what I have done as a parent. I know how much time, dedication, energy, hours, endless hours I've spent parenting, and I can't just roll over. I cannot be the bigger person. I can't be that person who just rolls over, lays down, and lets someone who might be stronger in power, stronger in position, stronger in money, stronger in gender. I can't let that bring me down. Like, I can't let that overpower me. And I need to be the fighter in this situation. And I need to stand up for my rights and step into my own personal power. And while I may be silenced to my story and silenced in my influence now, I know that the truth will come out. And that's really like the beauty of this whole thing, is that if you just scratch the surface of the truth, if you're able to create that opening enough for the truth to come out, and if you're able to break the silence enough for that truth to come forth, that it will come forth. It will come true. And so I'm back to, when is it okay to stay silent? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Like, I don't know the answer to that question, because I think the abuse that has happened in many groups, and we're not just talking about marital relationships, child custody relationships, alcoholic relationships. We're talking about like women in the workplace. We're talking about the whole issue with transgender, which I've shared with you that was near and dear and is near and dear to my heart, as I have a transgender child. And my biggest worry of how my child telling me that he was transgender, like my biggest worry was him being shunned by society. And luckily there's been enough awareness now that hopefully that's happening less and less and less. But it's like, if you remain silent in the face of something that's unjust, what makes that okay? So let's start the conversation, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe to my channel below. Share this video with friends, family, and your dog, and I will see you in the next video.